Now, the South Koreans already signed a free trade deal with the EU earlier this year.
Yes.
So is the U.S. playing catch up at the moment?
Oh, the U.S. is definitely playing catch up. We haven't negotiated a free trade agreement in 4 years, and the South Korea agreement, along with Panama and Colombia, have been sitting on the shelf just collecting dust for the past 4 years. So we are running behind.
Now, the Democrats, especially the unions, had been opposed to this for a year, and this free trade agreement was actually hammered out several years ago under the Bush administration. It just couldn't quite get through Congress because of the unions, because of the Democrats as well. Now, with the U.S. economy on its knees, with people desperate for jobs, was that particularly a pivotal factor in pushing this through?
It was somewhat of a factor. This was a part of President Obama's jobs plan to pass the 3 free trade agreements. But ultimately, the president got behind the agreements to show some bipartisan support. He said over a year ago that he wanted to double exports by 2014. But in order to do that, we have to ratify these agreements and get them fully in place and implemented so that free trade can start flowing and we can double those exports.
Can you give us an example of exactly how jobs would be created in the U.S.?
Well, jobs are created by an increased amount of U.S. goods and services being exported to these countries. So you have increased jobs of production jobs. You also have increased jobs on the ports and in shipping and other sectors and areas, and also agriculture jobs. This agreement with South Korea will lead to more beef exports. They stopped importing our beef back in 2003 after there was a mad cow case in Washington state. Those exports resumed back in 2008 after much negotiation, and now they have returned to being our 3rd largest export to beef. So their jobs on the farm, their jobs in the plants, and their jobs on the ports.
Now, you mentioned some of the changes that were made, and the Obama administration did have to tweak the original free trade agreement to make it a little bit more palatable to certain sectors like the auto sector and the beef sectors, and that was mainly through dropping tariffs. What are some of the major changes?
Well, it wasn't just about tariffs. It was about some of the regulations and the other standards that were mentioned in the package, talking about how the cars have different environmental standards in South Korea. They're different sizes, so easing up on those. Also, it put in place some safeguards for the auto industry, and there is one measure saying that U.S. exports of cars have to increase before the import of South Korean cars can begin.